I remember starting my very first vegetable garden. It was a really exciting time, but just a little bit overwhelming. Where do I begin? What should I plant? And will I even get a harvest? Well look, whether you're adding to your garden this growing season or you're a complete novice and starting your very first garden, I hope this video should provide you with a little bit of inspiration to get started. Hi, I'm Ben, and today we're going to install a new vegetable bed together. We're going to get it planted, and I'll be sharing some tips to get you through those first nail-biting months. Don't worry, your new veggie garden is going to look fantastic. So today I'm going to add another one of these beds here. This is about 3 foot or slightly over 3 foot by 4 foot or 100 by 120 centimetres. It's a pallet collar bed, so it's instant and it comes ready-made like this, and it fits in with what I've already got here. It gives those nice pleasing lines of symmetry and just adds to the order of it all. Now, why raised beds? Why bother with them? Let me show you why. So the whole point of a raised bed is that it raises the surface area above the surrounding ground level. And what that does, it means it drains through a lot quicker, so the growing medium inside dries out quicker. And after a long wet winter, that's really valuable because drier soil in the spring tends to warm up a lot quicker, giving you a head start on sowing in the colder ground down here. So to get our raised bed in place, you will need a raised bed or materials to make one with. You'll need some cardboard. You'll need a growing medium to fill up your bed and of course a wheelbarrow to transport it, some tools, and of course our plants and seeds. The bed we're installing today is a pallet collar bed, which can be sourced very cheaply indeed. But if you want a different size bed, perhaps one that's a bit longer for example, it's very easy to make your own from lumber. As you'll be growing edibles in the bed, use untreated natural wood, as you don't want any nasty chemicals leaching into the soil. If you want to make your own bed like this, use wood that's at least 1 inch or preferably 2 inches, that's 5 centimetres thick. This will give a really solid, long-lasting bed. Just drill pilot holes close to the end of each plank and into the adjoining plank, then screw together using long screws to ensure a properly secured finish. Overlap the planks like this, one over the other, all the way around. So the bed is adding on to the end of this row here. It does get a fair amount of sunshine, but it also has a fair amount of dappled shade too. That's fine. Ideally, you want to put beds where they get as much sunshine as possible, at least 6 hours, 8 hours ideally. But never mind, if you do have quite a shady spot, you can at least grow some leafy crops and salads, many of which we'll be planting today in fact. I'm on a bit of a slope here, so I'm going to dig this bed into the slope so it's nice and level so the water doesn't run off. A bit of a slope's fine, but too much and it gets a bit problematic. You can either build up the soil on the underside to lift it up level or dig it in like I'm about to now. So I marked out the position of the bed with canes pushed into the corners just so I know where I'm digging, and then I can start work. This is actually quite a quick project. I reckon the digging in takes about 15 minutes and then putting in the growing medium and planting, I reckon you can get this done within 1 hour. I honestly do. It's a lovely project. You could even get it done in your lunch break maybe. Very satisfying. That's it dug out, I think, to the best of my ability. I'm just going to check the levels now. If you don't have a spirit level, then little tip, you can actually download for free spirit level apps to your phone and use that instead. So I've dug it in as best I can, but I'm a little bit out of breath, so I'm going for a combination. I'm just shoring up the front of it here with some material to raise this side up so it is nice and level, which it is now, and then I'll use some of this excavated material back around the edges to firm the bed in. To help suppress the weeds, I'm going to put a layer of cardboard down. This acts as a barrier. It makes it much harder for the weeds to get through. To be honest, with the grass here, you could just dump the growing medium on top, having given it a really close crop, but I just like to be on the safe side and use cardboard. When you're using cardboard, I think I've mentioned this before, do make sure it's plain cardboard, not glossy cardboard. It's fine if it's got a bit of printing and writing on it, because those are usually made from organic plant-based dyes, but you don't want that glossy stuff because that's just bits of plastic really, and that'll come off. Get a really good overlap so that the weeds don't get a chance to poke through, and just make sure it's quite damp. It's going to be raining a lot later on this week, so I don't think I'll need to wet this down or anything, but if you are in a dry climate, give it a good soak to thoroughly wet it through. Now this will take about 2 months or so to rot down, and by that time all of this grass at least will have died off, and if you've got perennial weeds they'll be severely weakened, and then you've got to get through all that growing medium on top. So it really does give you a competitive edge. Some people use that sort of weed suppressing membrane like Mypex, made from sort of plastics and so on. I'm not keen on that for obvious reasons. Try and use to use less plastic, and why not use waste materials you've got to hand anyhow. Just make sure you remove any staples and bits of tape so it's just clean stuff. The beauty of starting a raised bed is there's no digging involved. It's the plug and play way to get growing. You simply pop your bed in, fill it with your growing medium, plant it, and you're away. Let's fill ours. No, I'm not starting a fire here. I'm just filling my bed, or starting to fill it, with what I've got around. Filling your bed can get quite expensive, especially if you're using bought-in all-purpose potting mix. It's pricey stuff. So start filling the bed with what you've got to hand. I've got these bits of prunings here. They've been lying around for about a year, so they're quite dry. I'm going to break them up by stabbing them down and spread them all out. And those will rot down. They'll act a bit like slow release fertiliser, slowly breaking down and adding their nutrients into the rest of the growing medium. You've got a few options when it comes to filling your bed with the rest of your growing medium. You could use well-rotted manure, that works well, green waste compost, topsoil, special topsoil you buy in, or indeed your own garden compost. I've used in the past green waste compost, which is compost made from collected garden waste that the council collects. The trouble is I found it contains lots of bits of plastic and glass and other debris. It's fine, I've used it to fill most of these beds, and I just fish these bits out as I come across them. But this time I decided to opt for mushroom compost. Mushroom compost, as the name implies, is compost that was used to grow mushrooms, but it's still got loads of good life in it, and it's really great stuff. So I bought it in by the bulk bag, and let's get it into our beds. When you're filling any bed, you want to really get the compost in there, right into the corners and edges, and don't be afraid to really pack it in. You can actually stand on it and press it in. You want it nice and firm so the roots have plenty to go on, and that way, you know, once you've squashed it down, you might need to go back and get another load. I started my first vegetable garden when I was about 10 years old, and it was quite a small plot, and I dug it all over with a little hand trowel. It took absolutely ages. It took a couple of weeks, I think, but it was thoroughly enjoyable. But if I'd have known about this no dig, no till technique then, it would have saved so much effort, I tell you. This is just so quick, so easy, and so instantaneous with the results. What I love about it is that you're starting with a really clean surface, so there's going to be no weed seeds in here. It's just going to give you such an easier start. So because I said the mushroom compost here is a bit lumpy, and I'll be sowing as well as planting into this, I want to finish with just a thin layer of slightly finer material. So I'm going to open this bag of all-purpose potting mix and just add that over. If you have just one bed to fill, then you might find it more economical to fill the bottom of the bed with just your garden soil and top up with a couple of bags like this, rather than getting in a whole load of it. But if you're doing more than, say, 2 beds, I think it's definitely worth getting a bulk bag of compost in, because it works out a lot cheaper per unit volume. There we are, it's looking beautiful. Never mind growing your food in it, you could eat your food off this. It's so clean and lovely. And now the most exciting part, planting, of course. I've got some plants that I started off in these plug trays here, which are ready to plant out. I sowed them in the greenhouse. If you want, you can buy plug plants. They're readily available in garden centres and plant nurseries, and especially in spring at this time of year. These have got a nice little root system and they're ready to go out. So I'm starting with these salad onions or spring onions or scallions, and I'm just going to pop them in. I've sown them in little clusters, so there's sort of between 3 and 5 plants in one little group. So I'll space them about, I don't know, 4 to 6 inches, that's 10 to 15 centimetres apart each clump. And they'll form little ready to go clumps of salad onions. Lovely stuff. And then next up I've got these radishes here, again sown in little clusters, and some lettuce. That's everything planted. I've got lettuces here, and I've sort of poked in between these radishes, which will really grow very quickly, and they'll be out before the lettuces fill out and need the space. Now I've got 2 things to sow. I'm going to grow some peas specifically for shoots to cut as leaves, and some beets or beetroot as well. A really narrow bed like this, you can kind of eyeball it, or you can just use a cane to get a rough kind of straight row like that. And then I'll put my pea shoots over at the edge here, and then just use a fork or trowel just to get down about, what, just under ½ an inch or a centimetre like that. So let's get our beets in, or beetroot. These are nice knobbly seeds. They're very satisfying to sow because you can see them quite clearly. And I'm just going to space them about a couple of inches apart along the row, and they'll come up, and I'll probably have to thin them a bit, but that's absolutely fine. Beetroot seeds are actually like a seed head, like a cluster of seeds. So you often get 2 or even 3 seedlings pop up for each seed. So you know that you're getting good value, I suppose, when you see these knobbly old seeds here. Now I'm sowing the peas. I've made a slightly wider drill here, and like a little trench, and I'm putting them a bit closer because these are just going to be grown for shoots. This seed's almost past its use by date, so I'm just cramming the last of the packet in here really, because I've got some fresh for actual peas later on, and cover them all up. Great. I'm going to give it a quick water because although it's going to be wet, I just want to get it off to a good start because the compost is quite dry. Wakes the seeds up. Let me just take a moment to show you how this is now looking on my garden plan. So you can see the extra bed I've added in just here to my plan. Zoom in a bit so you can see it more clearly. There we go. You won't find this garden planner in the App Store, so I will pop a link to where you can find it in the video description below. These should all grow really quickly at this time of year. In fact, I grew a very similar bed of salads and roots last spring, and I was picking them within about 4 to 6 weeks after planting them as plugs. I'd really recommend planting a bed of fast-growing salads like this because it really gets you motivated and encouraged for further plantings. This bed and the next make great use of space, with corn underplanted with lettuce, which will be harvested long before the corn grows taller and fills out. There's also a sprawling squash in there to weave among the corn, then out onto the path. This is a great example of a bed devoted solely to leafy salads, including Asian greens like mizuna, while this bed is host to beets or beetroot, kohlrabi and dwarf beans. There are so many options. That's the really thrilling thing about all of this. The final step, and this is really optional, is to cover our newly sown bed with a bit of fleece. These have been cosseted in the greenhouse, so they're used to the warmth. So this will just help them make the transfer. It's still very early spring here, and although these are cold season crops and perfectly hardy, I just reckon they'll get a better start with a bit of a cover over them. If I'm honest, I think probably the main reason, aside from the slight chill, is also the pests early in spring. There's a lot of pigeons in my garden. They've decimated the brassicas, and my very cute but very annoying dog Rosie as well. She's often sniffing around here, and there's also a cat as well. So there's everything out to dig up our perfectly clean beds. So this will just keep them off. I'm weighing it down so the wind can't get in underneath and blow it off, and I'll probably just keep it here for 2 to 3 weeks until the plants have sort of settled down and got a little bit bigger, and can kind of better fend for themselves. That's it, that'll do the job. I've started off a new raised bed today, but of course there's no reason that you have to do a raised bed. You could just start them off straight in the ground. And if you want to do that, just plonk your organic matter like well-rotted compost or manure directly on top of the soil about a couple of inches or 5 centimetres deep, then plant straight into that. It's absolutely fine to have a new vegetable bed standing as like an island, perhaps in amongst lawn all around it. But if you've got lots of these beds, like I've got in my vegetable garden here, then you're going to need paths in between them. So for my paths, I like to use wood chips, and I just lay them again on a weed smothering layer of cardboard and just spread them out. Now, I love wood chips because they don't need mowing, and getting the lawnmower in between these beds would be a little bit fiddly. And as they rot down, they feed the soil. Now you might think, well, what's the point in that? You're not growing anything in here. But it feeds the whole soil of this whole area and contributes to the ecology of it. So you've got nutrients going down here, and you'll get the roots of sort of bigger, more vigorous plants like squash getting in there, and that'll give them a further boost. Plus, this is really beautiful material for all sorts of beneficial bugs, like those beautiful ground beetles that help to keep the slug population down. Yes, it does need topping up from time to time, but it's a lovely material to work with. It's clean, it smells gorgeous, and it keeps your feet nice and clean as well. Or if you want to do your beds just directly on the grass, but without the raised beds, then you can just put down your cardboard and then put a nice thick layer of your compost or other organic matter like we did with our raised bed. To make it easier though, you could just temporarily hem in the sides with bits of wood just to fill it, and then put your path material in, and then you can remove it later on. And of course, if you don't fancy all that bending over, you can go the other way. Use taller raised beds, perhaps grow in planters raised up on legs, or grow in containers. I really love starting off new growing areas. To me, it means more delicious garden-grown organic produce, and that's what motivates us all, right? Now tell me, do you have plans for expanding your vegetable garden, or perhaps you're starting off your very first garden? Tell me all about it in the comments below. What are we up to next time? Well, we will be getting our crunch on with a look at how to grow carrots. How do you get perfect roots every time? Well, tune in next week to find out. Do drop this video a thumbs up, please subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already, and I'll catch you next time.